So hi guys again. Anyway, so this is now going to be about me growing up basically in the UK. So I was born on the 8th of January 1991 to my mum and dad, obviously. And I was born in a hospital in the town that I live in. And I was such a small baby. I was £6'6", so I was little and I was a little bit early, but not too early. I don't know a lot about, you know, when I was born or anything like that, but it's a bit weird. Like, I tried to come early, I know that, and my mum had preeclampsia with me, like I did with Ed. Yeah, it's a bit, you know, hard to explain about it, but basically when I come home, and when I got home, I grew up for the first pretty much almost 2 years in a council flat, which if you don't live in the UK, a council flat is like affordable housing, where, like, you know, people get help, and the rent is a lot cheaper than obviously if you went private rent. For the first obviously 2 years I don't really know much of what happened, but then obviously my mum kept going back until they would give us a 3-bed council house, because my mum was pregnant with my sister, and then we had a 3-bed council house. When I was 22 months my sister was born, my little sister Rachel. So there is literally 22 months between us, which is almost 2 years. And I didn't like her. Not really. When she was born, the story goes that she was born and mum and dad brought me in to go and see her. The baby gave me a present, which I think was a puzzle. I didn't like the baby. I punched the baby and ran away. And to be honest, that's not changed very much. Me and my sister go to and fro of liking each other and not liking each other. So, all good. But yeah, so, you know, we didn't overly like a great deal of each other. My mum used to work nights and my dad used to work days. Back in them days they only got about 6 weeks maternity leave, whereas now we get obviously a lot more, and it wasn't paid, I don't think. So, you know, me and my sister weren't the best of buds when we were little. I can remember doing a lot of things when I was little and living in that house. I can remember me and my sister used to like to play in the mud, and we used to get naked and play in the back garden in the mud. I can remember helping my dad once in the garden when he was, because he's a gardener, helping my dad plant some plants. And I can remember it was an Easter and we were doing the Easter egg hunt in the garden, and Dad had some soil, some turf, like, you know, the rolled up turf that you put out. And I can remember going in, I'm pretty sure this was Easter, and I can remember going in and with my little tiny wheelbarrow, because, you know, I'm a proper outdoorsy girl and I've always been like it, and Dad putting one of them in there and I was pushing it into the garden so Dad can do it. Yeah, I had a brilliant childhood though. I absolutely loved my childhood. I can also remember there was a bird's nest once in that garden, and my dad was telling me about the bird's nest, and that Dad put in a pond, but we never ended up having fish in there. And when he was filling it up, I fell into the pond and it was quite cold. And I can remember when I was a little bit older, it started to snow, and it was such, back then we didn't really get snow. It's a very strange, only the last, I don't know, 5-6 years have we actually gotten a decent amount of snow here, and it was just such a dusting. And I can remember we all packed up and went to Wales where my grandparents lived, because my parents are Welsh, and, you know, it still wasn't that much snow. It was probably only about that much snow, and like we made this little tiny snowman, me and my sister. But it's always been, you know, not a lot of snow, but it's always been fun, like. And I can remember my mum and dad were saving to buy that house, to have a mortgage to buy that house, because once you've been in the council house for 3 years they give you the option of buying it. So I can remember my dad saving and working a lot more hours. Like, he used to work 7 till 7 or 7 till 8 or 7 till 9, whatever time, to get as much money as he can to do it. And I can always remember saying to my mum, why are you giving us Smart Price crisps and stuff like that, because we went from Walkers to Smart Price. And that's just mum and dad saving up for the mortgage. Like, they had to cut back on things like to save up for the mortgage. I can remember I can remember being in preschool. One of the things in preschool, the only thing I can really remember in preschool, is we had a tray, and we had a piece of paper on the tray and a marble, and we put the marble in paint, and we put it on the piece of paper in the tray, and we moved the tray and made like a marble picture. That's pretty much the only thing I can remember about preschool, and then having milk and then biscuits afterwards. It sounds really strange, but that's all I can remember of preschool. I'm really forgetful anyway, so that's pretty much all I can remember about that. And then I can remember going to my first school, and I can remember a couple of things about my first primary school, because I moved from one primary school to a different one when we moved house. I can remember being in reception and being outside and playing, and my nan used to live in the street that school used to be in, and she used to come up and wave to me over the fence. I can remember going to do something to do with a rainbow. I think we were painting a rainbow, and I went with the teacher to go and get some paper, some coloured paper, and I twisted my ankle, and then I went back, and then she put my ankle up on a chair and stuff like that. And I can also remember there being like an Indian girl there, which is really strange. And I can remember we used to be friends, but she disappeared and I never saw her again really. And she had that little dot on her head and everything. We were like proper friends. I went to her party once and everything, and like I really liked her. I can't remember a lot about her, but I can remember we used to play, and I know there is a picture of us together like at this party playing on a kitchen, and one of them plastic like kitchen thingies. So yeah, and that was quite fun. When I was in year 2, I think it was about year 2, I moved schools because we had moved house, and Mum and Dad had bought a different house and we were moving from the old one. And it was, I can remember one thing I did though before we moved was we were packing up to move, and I found some matches and I burnt my finger trying to light the matches with my doll. So don't play with matches, kids. I can remember going to look at this house that Mum and Dad were going to buy, and I can remember going into the room that was going to be my room, because I had the big room in the old house and I wanted the little room in the new house. And it had, because little rooms are little rooms as well, they're like little box rooms. And I can remember sitting there, and I really liked the wallpaper. It had Care Bears on it, and I was like, I really want this room because it had Care Bears on it. And we had then moved, and when we'd gone to go in and move in, the stupid cow that had that room before me, this girl, had like drawn all over the walls, and it weren't there before, and I was like, she literally writ all over her walls, and I was like, gutted about this. And then for the first, I don't know, a couple of months, me and my sister shared a room because Mum and Dad had to decorate my room. And I can remember we had, Dad did it in this blue wallpaper that looked like the sky. It was really strange. It had like a light and darky, it looked like a sky basically, like small little clouds. It was really nice. And I can remember my first night in there, I really wanted to be in there, and literally Dad just put the bed in there, and that was all that was in there. And I slept in there, and there's a little picture of me in bed and our dog at the time at the end of the bed, and Mum had put my curtains up overnight to try and keep some of the warmth in. The curtains are like slightly slanted in the picture. But yeah, and I've always loved that house. That's obviously where my parents still lived, and it has always been, that has been my home, and I've absolutely loved that house. And when I left, when I had Ed, I was a bit gutted about it because obviously it's always been my home. But I mean, we've had a lot of ups and downs in that house. I mean, my nan had a heart attack, God knows how many times in that house. I can remember one year she had a heart attack the day before my birthday. So Mum and Dad went up to Wales to go and be with my nan, even though my mum's got loads of brothers and sisters, loads of brothers anyway, but they went up, and my mum asked my friend's mum if she could have us overnight, so they had me and my sister, and we woke up in the morning and she gave me my birthday present. She was such a cool friend. Like my friend's mum was amazing. Gave me a birthday cake, they sang happy birthdays, they got me balloons, and then I can remember Dad coming down to pick us up. We went up to Wales and we went to go and see my nan, like, even though she had a heart attack, we went to go and see my nan on my birthday, and it was just really, you know, we've always had a good time there. And we've had a lot of obviously, like I said, ups and downs. When I was about, it weren't that long after moving into that house, my uncle had, how do I put it? When my uncle basically, he died. And for about a week, none of us had heard from him. And he was a lovely man. And he used to work with my dad. And he was literally one of the men you can say is like an amazing uncle. And he was always so friendly and stuff. And my granddad found him. And he had died on the sofa asleep. And he was going, I think he was going out for a Halloween party or something. And he had passed away in his sleep. Like, just went. And I can always remember that is the first time I seen my dad cry, because my neighbour come in to babysit me and my sister, and it has always been that was the first time I'd seen my dad cry, truthfully. And my mum obviously was crying, and me and my sister were both really upset. And it's a shame, because if he was here now, he would be an amazing father. And it's such a shame. And I mean, when I take my neighbour up to the grave every other Thursday, I go up and put some flowers on there now. Like, I never used to go up there to go and see him, but now, you know, I kind of do the rounds, and I do. Not that many years after that, I think I was about 10, my nan, I was a bit younger than that. My nan had quite a few problems, and something went wrong, and she had this operation on her leg where they took a vein from somewhere, put it in her leg, and she got really ill. And this was while I was still in my primary school, and then my nan died as well. And again, that was one of the only times I saw my dad cry, like, 'cause she was really upset. My mum was hysterical. My granddad was, you know, even worse. And I didn't cry. It sounds really bad, but I don't cry when people die. I find it really hard to, I'm such an emotional person, but I get a block when somebody dies, and I can't cry, and I don't know why. And it takes me a couple months for it to sink in until I do, like, you go through the stages, and that's kind of what happened. But anyway, let's go on about some good things before we get on to more bad things. And in my second primary school, I can remember it because they had like a big, in the small bit of the school for like the younger kids, they had like a little tiny playground with a little train climbing frame thingy, and obviously they spray paint things on the floor like snakes and ladders and hot scotch and stuff. I can remember being in there a couple of times, and then going up to the big playground, which weren't that much bigger, and you know, playing in there. And then to go on this, we had the climbing frame things, and you had to wear your gymnastic shoes. You weren't allowed to wear trainers or your school shoes. You had to wear your black PE shoes. That's what it was. You had to wear your PE shoes to do it. And I can remember my dad used to be a governor of the primary school, and he used to come in, and he used to be the gardener too, and he used to bring a group full of kids out to do the gardens, and I was always there. Me and my sister, we got a lesson just because our dad was a governor and doing the gardens, and we always did it. Dad taught us about flowers and stuff like that. That's why I've always been an outdoorsy person. I can also remember when it was sunny, going on to the school fields, which you had to cross the road and go to the school field, and you used to be able to go out and eat your lunch there, and then go run around and play. And I can always remember my friend Carl, and he's been my friend since primary school, and he used to Skype. His mum used to drop him off. He used to have his Nintendo thing. What was it? A Game Boy Color. He used to walk into the field when his mum had gone, go right up to the top of the hill, and in one of the hedges that only a couple of us knew about, there was a gap. And in the gap there was like quite an open bit of hedge where it never really grew. And we used to always hide in there, and that's where he used to hide. And like, his mum used to get in trouble because she never dropped him off to school, and she did. He was hiding, and then they found out one day that's where he was hiding, so then he had to come to school. But he was such a cute child. He was just a little scrubby kid. He's all chubby. And I can remember being the overhead projector monitor. And we used to have, when you got a bit older, you get to either be like the person that told the kids where to go in the hall for assembly, or you could be able to turn the music on, or you could do the overhead projector, and I was always doing the overhead projector. I was also in the choir in primary school, So that was cool. And I had the best singing voice out of everybody. That's what the teacher told me. Because she's cool, and I always used to get the best parts, and I always used to get solos. Like, I used to be Tom the Lamplighter, and that was like the opening bit, and I was Tom the Lamplighter, and I used to sing and did my tap dancing. Yeah, I did tap dancing and dance and ballroom because I was cool. And then one time I was in the school play. We were doing Alice in Wonderland, and I was a parrot with an umbrella, and I did Singing in the Rain. Do 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 do. That was brilliant, and I did like a Singing in the Rain dance with my thing, and I was epic. I was like, yeah, I was brilliant. And I can remember they did this thing as well at one point where you used to draw your own little card, and they laminated it, and you then took it into this little courtyard that they had, and you hand it over, and then you can pick a toy, and then at the end of lunch you used to bring it back, and then you get your card back, and you used to keep it safe like a actual card, and it was really cool. Like, and we had woodshop as well, which was awesome because there was a man there called Mr. Bridle, and he was the only man in the whole primary school. No word of a lie. Everybody was women. All the teachers were women. The headmistress was obviously a woman. Reception was women. The only other man that was there was my dad. And like, it was hysterical because like he used to teach us like woodshop. And I can remember that when they got the first lot of computers in and they put them all downstairs, they cleared this bit out and they put them all downstairs in this bit. I'd like to go and see this school again. I haven't seen it in years. Like, I wanted Ed to go there, but I don't live near enough there anymore. It was such a cool, like, primary school. Anyway, let's talk about secondary school. When I did my SATs for secondary school, I was a bit stupid, and they didn't turn out very good, so I got put down in a band called K-band. And you get K-band and H-band, but I was top of K-band, and they wanted to put me into H-band because my maths and science were really good, but my English was not, because I'm not very good at English. So, yeah. When I went to secondary school, I can remember my first day going to secondary school in my uniform, and I was like the shortest person there. I was so tiny. And I always thought, like, when you go to secondary school, it was going to be like going to like an American secondary school where you get like loads of lockers, and yeah, no, we didn't have a locker at all. And I was well gutted. I thought we were going to have these cool like American style lockers, and like it was going to be like it weren't. It sucked. So this is secondary school. I wasn't overly popular in my secondary school. It was a bit weird. And I did things like art, and art was always my favourite thing in school, and yeah, well, I did art. And I can remember in year 7 we had to draw a person, and the teachers, Mr. Askew, gave us all these books to choose from, and Leanne chose to draw a naked vagina. And ever since then I've been gay. No, I'm not really, but yeah, I always did naked people from then on. And my teacher said I was just, he said that when I went to college, because he wanted me to go and do art, that was what I was going to stick to, and I had to do that. And I was just, he's always said that's always been my gift of like drawing was, but I could only ever draw naked women. I couldn't draw naked men. I found it really hard to draw their willies, especially when I was younger. I was like, oh my god, it's a willy. But I was always good at it, and I absolutely loved art. And I loved music as well. I went on to a Saturday school after I finished dance, and I kind of got bored of dance because I weren't really getting anywhere in it. So I did music, and I did violin and singing and recorder again like I did in primary school, and drama, and I just loved it in this Saturday school. And you know, I got up to like grade 5 on my singing, and I got nothing less than a merit, which is always good because you can get like a pass, a merit, or a distinction. So I never got a pass, I always got a merit, and I never failed. I even went in once with tonsillitis and I still got a merit. I found it really hard to sing because afterwards my voice went, but you know, I pumped that song out, and well, my song's out, and I got my merit, so I was well happy. And I absolutely loved Saturday school. It was like the best thing ever. We did painting and arty things, and I've always been one of these arty girls that I love arties, and obviously, as you can tell, Eddie's a bit into his arty stuff as well. But yeah, it's always been good. When I was 14, we'll skip a couple of years ahead now. Well, no, actually, when I was about 13, I started cadets, army cadets, because I was awesome. And I absolutely loved army cadets. It was brilliant. You know, I met little boys. And it was just really fun. Like I had a lot of fun doing cadets, and I loved going off to the 2-week camps, and I could like do press-ups like a boss. My leg muscles were like horrendous for a girl. I was like proper, all into it. It was really fun, and I met a lot of friends, a lot of girlfriends that are really gay now, and finding out a couple of years later that they've always had a crush on me, and that they, and trying to explain to them that I'm not gay, I'm actually straight. Even though I act a bit gay, I'm a bit, masculine, I'm not, I am straight. I love a ding dong, not that thing. Yeah, so it's always been funny to me. And I absolutely love cadets. It was always really, really fun. When I turned 15, we'd go on to when I turned 14, we found out my granddad had cancer. He had lung cancer, and obviously he had smoked for years and years and years and years. But he never really told anybody how far he had, how long he had, and he didn't last as long as the doctors said that he was going to last. And I can always remember, because we were going to San Francisco. It was our first holiday to America, really, and it was, it was so exciting. We were going to San Francisco, and we only went for a week, I think, which was gutting, because I absolutely loved it. That's one place I really want to go, and I always say if I'm going to go on honeymoon, I want to go there again. But Jay doesn't want to go to America, so if we ever get married, we're screwed. But I always want to go there. Like, I remember we were going, and we went to go and say goodbye to my granddad. We all kind of had a feeling he weren't going to last by the time we got back, and my mum said, I'm going to stay here with you, and he said, no, you go and have fun. And he said to my mum that he's going to die. He wants to die on the same day that my nan had died, because he doesn't want people to grieve for 2 different days in the year. And like, I remember going, and obviously back then none of our phones we could use over there, and we had such a great time. And we got back, and as soon as we got back to England, my mum had missed calls and voicemails, and my granddad had died the day after my nan had died. Now that, I didn't cry, but that affected me more than anything in the world. That has been, apart from my miscarriage, one of the only things that has cut me up so bad. And I went batty. I mean, I was 15 when he died, and I did a lot of silly things, like I had sex, and I just generally did some.
The big one is out.
Oh dear, right, we'll go and plug it in over there then.
Thanks.
I did some silly things. I got a bit drunk and did silly things like that. It affected me, and then in the summer of that year, I had a breakdown, and I had to go to counselling, and we had a family counsellor, and I can remember Mum rang the doctors because I was on the sofa rocking, screaming, and she didn't know what's wrong with me. So Mum was freaking out, so she rang the doctors, and I went to go, and they sent me to go and get some help. And I did go a little bit crazy, a little cray-cray, a little bit. A little bit cray-cray, as Ed said. And yeah, and that really, it really did affect me. And I've never been right since. I've always gotten, I have been a lot stranger since that's happened, because I find it, I don't like talking about things a lot, and it's hard to open up about it, and I find it difficult to try and talk. And when I do go and talk to people about it, like I get proper help, they don't understand, because I can't get what I want out, and I don't know how to explain things to them, and they're no good because they can't get it out. They just talk crap, and you're like, shut up, you're not doing it right. So yeah, it did affect me. And then I can remember my friend Jess and John, well, Jess at the time, she's now a man. I got a lot of strange friends. My friend Jess and John said to me, do you want to come church? I was like, how am I hell going church with you? The hell? I am not religious at all. And so I came down and went with him, and it was so funny. We went to this proper old-fashioned weird church where like the vicar was weird, and I was like, and I did go there a couple of times because, you know, we kind of sat at the top and took the piss out of it a lot. You know, sometimes we listened. We basically went just to drink the wine and did communion. That's pretty much what we did. And then I can remember it was coming up to Christmas time, and they went to a different church after they went to that one, and I can remember going and meeting this boy, and I can remember my first ever time going. They did this weird thing, like they put his hand on his head and he shook and fell on the floor, and I was like, alright, shh, mummy's doing YouTube. And I can remember it was just so weird, and I was confused. I was like, what's going on? And I loved it. And I stopped going to the other church and started going to that church on time. And I was like in love with this boy. And I can remember us sitting on this sofa one time, and he like kissed me. And I was like in church, he kissed me. I was like, but now we realise I was a bad example on him. I don't know. It was just very strange, and it was, I don't know, I really liked it, but I didn't like his dad. And then in the February, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and it was like proper love song, girlfriendy thing. I was like, yeah, alright, like I was proper smitten. And I think we were about together for about 6 months, and we didn't do anything. We literally kissed and held hands. We used to always meet to go and get coffee after school. It was just so cool, and you know, we felt so grown up. We're like, I was like 16 and he was 15, but you know, we felt grown up and stuff. And then I did something naughty, and anyway, I did something naughty, and somebody found out and told his dad, and his dad told him that, this after a year, his dad told him that he can't be with me anymore because I was a bad example on him, and I'm not a true Christian girl, and basically because I was a born again Christian. And after we broke up, that crushed me as well, because, you know, it was my first, I was 17, it was my first kind of love, like what I thought was my love. Well, now I realise it weren't love, it was just being a 16, 17-year-old girl being silly, and I was devastated for quite a few months. I thought we were going to get back together, and we didn't. I stopped going to church because I couldn't stand it anymore. I have gone back to that church a couple of times, but people have obviously found out about what was going on, and they didn't like it. And I can remember my mum going in there and shouting, no one seems to give a shit that he stuck his dick in, you know, like full on going about him dipping his dick out in church, and oh my god. And it was all because I was not a Christian girl, and even though I got baptised and I probably followed it, we were a bit silly and we got carried away, and it happened, and you know, it happens sometimes. And yeah, it was just a bit strange. And I can remember that me and Matt went back and forwards for a couple of months as well before that. We kept breaking up, and then I started seeing this boy called Carl, which is the boy from primary school, and like through secondary school, me and him were always together. We were always boyfriend, girlfriend, like we went. And like, I remember me in the wrong way stupidly going back out with Matt, which is the boy from school, from college, from church, and I can remember like thinking to myself, why did I do that? Why did I go? Why couldn't I just, sometimes now I even say it to myself, why didn't I just wait for Carl, and I would have been like, be with me? And sometimes I think to myself that we could even, oh, the sun's doing something weird. There we go. Sometimes I think to myself, like, we could even be together now. And I don't know why I did it. And by the time it got to the stage of me realising that it was Carl I wanted to be with, I was devastated because he had a girlfriend, and he had finally got his first, like, proper girlfriend, like, proper girlfriend. And I was devastated. Absolutely devastated that he had his girlfriend, and I was praying that they would break up and stuff because I just wanted to be with him. And from that stage till the January of me turning, well, from, I think it might have been April time till the October, I was single but being a bit silly. And then it was Halloween, and I'd broken up with this other bloke, and I met Tom, which is Ed's dad. And you know, we were together all the time. My parents don't like him or didn't like him. His mum liked me, but she thought I was a bit snobby for him, which is fair enough. And in the January I found out I was pregnant, so there we go. That is pretty much what happened. That is my life wrapped up all in pretty much up until pregnancy, just to let you know. So yeah, it's been a fun childhood. I've had a couple of upsets and stuff, but my parents have always been very good. Apart from when I found out I was pregnant, but they've always been my parents. So this is part 1, guys. Like I said, it's a very long video. So I'm going to put all the links and stuff down below. Like and subscribe. If you've watched the whole of this video, thank you very much. If you haven't, I don't blame you, it's long. But thank you very much for watching. And look forward to part 2. Kay?